2, and 1.
Our next guest is the pride of Sachem. He's the current head coach of Sachem East. That's Ray Pickersgill. How are you, Coach?
I'm okay. Been better. We just took a tough one with Brentwood tonight, but it's so it goes. That's the sport.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're in the big boy league, right? I mean, you're in the tough league. I mean, look, we're Tori and I come from small leagues, but we don't want to admit it, but League One is just is brutal, right? So, Coach, we have a lot to talk about. Look, Sachem, one of the most historical programs in the state of New York and even in the country, right? You guys have been around, very successful for decade after decade, right? So, talk to me about how did you get involved? I've known you for a very long time, Ray. How did you get involved in the sport of wrestling?
Oh God, it was actually funny because I really was a fan growing up at WWF wrestling, which now
Right.
and I was at Lindenhurst Middle School, and they made the announcement that there was wrestling, and I was like, wow, this is going to be great. Probably the same story you guys all have. You show up, and this doesn't look anything like it does on TV. But it was good, and I got to really good exposure. Like I said, in middle school, I wrestled at Lindenhurst, so. My middle school coach was Paul Broadmerkel, and
legend.
Legendary coach Paul Broadmerkel. He has just come back from Hofstra at the time, and he finds himself coaching middle school at Lindenhurst Middle School. So that was a jump for him, but he was great. He made me love the sport. Really hard-nosed guy, but he cared, and that was something that I always saw. And ironically, when I did eventually go to Sachem, his best friend was Jack Mahoney, who was my high school coach. So I've had some good influences.
I would say you had some really good coaches. Look, we kid around, but all joking aside, you guys, whether it's I call it Sachem United, Sachem East, Sachem North. I mean, you guys are always a force to reckon with. It takes a special team to beat you guys. Year in, year out, you guys are consistent, right? How do you maintain that level of consistency, right? I mean, look, Sachem, you guys don't rebuild, you reload. I think one of the things that, you guys, sometimes you get football players out, you get athletes from kind of all walks of life in your school. How do you maintain that level of consistency? Look, I know you're a little bit larger school and you have good numbers, but you always have a good product to put out.
Back when we were together and we were one high school until about 2004, it was a little easier because we did have the numbers to compete with Brentwood and some of the other schools. And since we've split, they've kind of dwindled a little bit. So you got to kind of make the sport a little bit more attractive to them. And you got to have help from the other coaches. And that's the whole thing about it. You need the 3 sport athletes. I would say, since I've come over to Sachem East 3 years ago, I've had probably about 85% 3 sport athletes on my team. And that helps so much. I mean, it's unbelievable. You get these kids that, I also coach football at Sachem East, and they're like, Coach, I think I'm going to wrestle this year. And I'm like, all right, sure. We'll see you there. And they actually come out. It's fantastic. Whereas, in the past, like you're begging kids to come out and everything like that. And it's hard sometimes to fill weights, but, the consistency, you need the numbers, and that's the thing. And our sport has been declining in years. This year is really tough because this year you had a
tough year. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people who didn't want to come out, and then, not a lot of people want to try, and some parents were afraid of it. And, I think the product we put out this year, it's been good. It's maybe we don't have the practice time, but I think we're still wrestling good quality matches, against each other.
So to talk about a couple of things, I just want to go off on a little bit of a tangent from my perspective of Sachem, and move to some personal things. Is I was around the first time that I really was able to consider that I was taking wrestling serious, or had an opportunity to take to be in a serious place for wrestling was at the Sachem Wrestling Room. And
absolutely,
it was a shrine to walk through. And Coach Mahoney is still one of the greatest influences of Long Island wrestling, certainly in my life, because what he created, was etched in my desire to want to continue. But there's not very much, when I say there's no ego, I think about yourself. I think about, another high school hero of mine, Dave Cruz. I think about a peer hero younger than me, Chris Iorio. I think about Isaac Ramaswamy. I think about Restrepo. talk a little bit about having, those type of guys in the room and the focus of freestyle wrestling in the off season. Cause I think it's one of the things in my head that defines Sachem wrestling more than anything else is your love for Olympic and Olympic styles of wrestling. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, all of those guys and how it works in the off season.
Absolutely. We were always just expected, to wrestle. Even when you were playing football or you were playing lacrosse or something like that, coach had the room open growing up. And he was the head of the Empire State Games team along with Craig Kelsky and, Jimmy Nanos and some of those other guys. And, even if you were playing lacrosse, he'd have the trials at Sachem. We always had stuff at Sachem. He would have a spring tournament at Sachem because he knew it would be easier for his guys to make it. And, we always knew if you wrestled in the off season, the more matches you got, the better you are. And, again, there was that whole emphasis on freestyle and Greco because you knew you were wrestling the better kids. And that was really the key. The kids that aren't as good sometimes don't wrestle in the off season because, let's face it, they're not as good because they don't wrestle in the off season. They're not trying to get better. The kids that are wrestling in the off season want to get better. So, that freestyle and Greco used to be the only thing that was around, and you didn't really wrestle folk style. And, it was a nice break too, because it was a different style of wrestling, but it was the same. And, again, it taught you how to use your hips. It taught you how to defend things a little bit better. And like I said, it was expected and we did it. And like I said, Coach Mahoney did the Empire team, for years. And when he was done, he's like, hey, it's yours. And, you're like, okay, I'll take it. And, you don't want to say no to something like that because now you realize the mantle that's being passed down to you. And, it was good because you get to now work with the best wrestlers in Long Island. And at the very same time, Isaac Ramaswamy became the head of the New York State national team. And, we ran our club and we had kids like Mike, when you were younger, coming to our club in the springtime. And we got to work with you and it was a pleasure because, bringing guys like you in, Mike, made our guys better. And that's really what it's all about.
Well, I just remember as a kid, just, always feeling that it was a privilege, to be honest with you, to step in around you and the coaching staff of Sachem, but also once, you were able to earn the right that the intent was the best for all the youth. So, just to kind of move to something a little bit, sadder since we do have the platform. I know that your father had, just recently passed away from the coronavirus, and he was, really sorry to hear about that. But he was, a bigger than life personality from what we understand out in Riverhead. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about, memorializing him in a short couple sentences, talk about him and his influence on you and obviously what's doing for kids now too.
Again, growing up, they were a little bit more of a blue collar family, but, he taught me work ethic and, he actually ironically went to high school with Jack Mahoney and Paul. So, but it was really about learning how to work hard. And he would always talk about this, tough wrestling coach at Lindenhurst, Jack Stanborough, who would, always
went on to UE, right? Yeah. Stanborough, right. You're right.
Yeah. And, kind of talked to me about how he kind of dabbled in it a little bit, but he didn't have time because he was always working. And, Dad was a hard worker and, he did everything he could, to get us by and get us the best we could. And, later on in life, in his years, he opened up a hair salon with my sister in Riverhead, and he got involved in the business improvement district and tried to rebuild Main Street in Riverhead. And, I would say for a good solid 10 years, he worked on every event he possibly could there between, fireworks displays and cardboard boat races and everything like that. And, he really tried to revitalize it. And, he looked at, like I say, a Patchogue and how they've kind of revitalized Main Street. And he was trying to do the same thing out in Riverhead.
Well, Coach, Coach, he certainly passed his work ethic, around to you. You're also one of the classiest coaches in Suffolk. We had you in Sable for a couple of years. We don't really talk about that. You had a brief stint in Sable, just to talk about, a little bit. I want to go back one more time to remember. And I can remember as a kid going to the Mahoney camp run by Mahoney. That was really the first major camp on Long Island, right? In terms of, and still is, right? So it was a who's who of wrestling, right? If I lived personally a mile north, I would have went to Sachem. We've talked about this before, right? So look, obviously you've continued on the legacy. You guys are obviously, successful team year after year. What I want to do is bring up a box score. Billy, I think we have a box score for Coach Ray to go over.
Mike, you are so good with the transitions lately. You are really, Ray, you are in for a treat because Mike is flowing like Biggie Smalls. He's doing great.
I am. So Ray, tell us about the team. Look, I mean, the other thing is, I mean, how many of these names are, I can remember maybe their fathers or uncles wrestling, right? I mean, wrestling is such a sport of kind of, just continuing the same names recycled over and over. Tell us a little bit about the team.
This year I knew, if we had a season, I knew we would have a pretty good team. Unfortunately, we got a couple of injuries and stuff like that recently, but I didn't mention it. They quarantined us for a week last week. So, we basically were rolling, we were looking good, and we were getting ready to wrestle Brentwood. And then the very day before that, they're like, sorry, you're quarantined for X amount of days. And, we kind of lost a little momentum. So they thanked us for quarantining and doing the right thing by giving us 5 League One dual meets in 5 days.
I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say on that.
So we had Brentwood tonight, and like I said, they're a good team. I'd be very surprised, if somebody beats them. As far as our lineup goes, we start with the Tejan brothers, and Mikey was a varsity wrestler last year as an 8th grader. Great kid, works hard.
Both of those guys, studs.
Yeah. Johnny Tejan placed 6th in the county last year. He was actually sick. He had an illness. He kind of gutted his way out through it. And, he wound up defaulting to 6th, but I'm sure if he was healthy, he would have probably been right there. One of the guys there. Richie Batangelo at 120 has found wrestling everywhere he can. He goes to Jeff Jordan camp, I would say twice a month if he can. He loves wrestling. He talks about wrestling all the time. Then we have some, good, contributors like AJ Licata in there. Obviously, if you know wrestling, Jared Winehouse.
Absolutely. State title threat for sure. Yep.
I was a 3-time All-County wrestler. And, last year, with the old system we had, it's unfortunate because he missed out on going to states. But, this year he would have obviously been one of the favorites at 132. And we have Lucas Conacher, who is the, he's been on the team since he's a 9th grader. He's a 2-time All-League wrestler, really, really tough wrestler. Then, of course, we have, Nick Jason, another solid competitor, and Joe Daisy and Ryan Maroney at 147. Ryan placed in the league last year, and he actually, he has an illness, so he's now going to be out. It's actually not COVID related. I don't know who that is at 152. That's my son. Actually.
I was gonna say, I know him. I've been following him since he was a schoolboy. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my son's at 152, and
I got to tell you, that makes me feel very old that he's a sophomore. I can't even believe that he's a sophomore. He's supposed to be in like 2nd grade, man.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's like all of a sudden, I don't know. We stay the same age, and they just get older.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mike is 10 as far as I'm concerned.
I still feel like I'm like Peter Pan, though. You have to understand, I'm still trying to be a youth.
Yeah, Dak's on the team, and like I said, this is the first year he really took it seriously. He's been on the team since he's an 8th grader. It's one of the reasons why I came over. I spoke to Swami a couple of years back, and he said, "Hey, you want to come join us, and I might step aside, and then you could coach your son." And I was like, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. And I actually spoke to Mike Falcon. I don't know if you remember Mike.
Of course, who does? Yeah, of course, yeah.
But Mike is the only 2-time state champ from Sachem, and basically Mike was like, "Listen, it was a heck of a ride when I got to coach little Mikey. I loved it. It just went way too fast." So I'm enjoying it. I don't know if my son's enjoying it too much, but I try to I let Restrepo deal with him a little bit more because I know I'll be really hard on him, and I know Jake will be too. But as his dad, I'm going to be real hard on him. Then of course we got Luba, Ryan Luba, who again as a senior is finally coming into his own. His dad obviously is the Luba that coached at Massapequa and a bunch of other different places there. Corey Cimino took 4th in the county last year. He's real tough, and again, he would be one of the guys that would probably be favored to win the counties this year. Had we had a tournament. Then we have Logan Catalanato, who's again his dad took over for Gary Mims at Massapequa.
That's what I'm saying. These names, I feel like it's like I know all these names over and over again. Yep.
And Logan is, he's just last year he was our most improved wrestler, and he took 4th in the league. And I got to tell you, he didn't improve just from match to match. He improved within matches sometimes. And he's a smart kid. He's tough, and he's all the way up to 189. He put on a lot of muscle in the offseason. And then we rounded out with two guys that, they make two linemen on football, Connor O'Hare and Tyler Price, who's a first-year wrestler. And it's unfortunate when you get a first-year wrestler who hasn't wrestled since middle school this year, because we don't have a whole heck of a lot of time to show them things. But, and then the staff, it's great. I got Jacob Restrepo, which, I don't know if there's anybody better, enthusiasm and technician wise, state champ. And I actually spoke to his dad a few times about this. I'm like, I don't know how you did this. Coached your son for all these years. You probably wanted to, have a heart attack. And
he's got another one too. He's got Sano. People don't realize he's going to be a stud too. Yeah.
The answer to that was, my son was really good, so it made it easier.
He was really good. Yeah, I'm following him.
Jackson Mordente and then Joe and Pat, were in there too as volunteers. So it's a good group. Like I said, it's a little smaller this year, but again, I feel like today we were in there with Brentwood. They hung tough in the matches that they weren't supposed to win, and they got bonus points where they were supposed to get it, and that was the difference. I took my hat to Nappy and his crew. The kids were ready to go, and they gave nothing up. The kid Walker that wrestled, Jared went right after him and took him down even, and you have their good kid at 104 now. I got to remember the weights. Quack.
I don't even remember the name. I can't remember the weights.
Kid who's
Jason Quack, right?
Yeah, Jason Quack. He's tough. He's a name to look out for.
Very tough. Very tough.
So, when you go up and down that lineup and you have just hard-nosed kids that just wrestle for 6 minutes, they're going to be tough to beat. They really are.
Coach, I think you've returned 3 all-county wrestlers, which is no easy feat, right? And I think we have one of your athletes. I'd love to bring him in. You could introduce him. I think it's Corey, right?
It should be, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's Corey.
Coach, why don't you tell us about Corey? I've heard the name. We know the name, obviously.
That's Corey Cimino. He's our 172, I think the new weight is, 172 pounder. Corey wrestled 52 and 60 last year. He's been on varsity since, basically, I guess, since he was a freshman. He was a starter as a sophomore. Each year he's won, 30 matches. Last year, he was a league finalist, lost a close 1-point decision, and then went on and had a fantastic county tournament.
A great county tournament. County tournament.
Semifinal match with Hunter Hughes, and then, wound up taking 4th. But like I said, he was the kind of kid that I looked at this year. If we didn't have a season, it would be a shame, for somebody like him, because he needed to get on the mat and finish his career on his terms.
Yeah, look, between the 4 of us, no one's listening. He would have been my favorite to, right up there to win that county tournament. So welcome to the show, Corey. We obviously been following you and great things from you. This is a short season here. What are your expectations for the season? What would make you feel like this was a great season, a successful season?
All I want to do is just go out on my terms. I just want to make sure I do everything I can do to be the greatest I can be for this team, for my coaches, my family, everyone who's been behind me since the beginning. I just wanted to get that opportunity. I was waiting, kept training every day. That's basically it.
So Corey, you're a senior right now. You close your eyes and you start to think, into college and then past. In your mind's eye, are you wrestling in college? If so, where are you looking? And then is there something that you can foresee yourself doing as a vocation or a job, post-college? And, what might that be?
Yeah, the plan is I want to wrestle in college. I've been looking at Binghamton, and I might wrestle in Nassau my first year and then transfer. But that's basically it. I just want to get started somewhere.
That's a great idea, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I always wanted to ask you, both of you guys. I think you could, Mike, you could probably fit Rocky Point High School and Sayville High School half the size of Sachem East, right? It's like a college campus. I think I'd probably get lost walking around. But look, you're having a great year. What's kind of what's next? What's the next thing you're gonna do? I mean, do you have, you talk about wrestling in college. Obviously, Coach Pickersgill, there's a lot of freestyle and Greco opportunities. What's next in terms of getting prepared over the next few months? Obviously, you have a short season. How's your training regimen?
I train every day. I go to the barn. I like to get in the weight room when I'm not in the wrestling room. And it's basically the next thing upstate. Hopefully they have that tournament in PA. They're hosting it, Journeyman. That's the next big thing for me. I'm just training every day, keep it up until then.
Newsday just did a little blurb about you. Can you talk about you know, just what wrestling you think has done for you in terms of the separation from your peers, the confidence and the chip that it gives you on your shoulder to walk into a room with your head high and your chest wide. You know, and you know, if there aren't people that know about wrestling, you know, what would you say to them about what it can do for somebody?
Wrestling, it just teaches you that you got to get up. You got to keep working. A defeat is just a defeat. And the next day, you got to just work 10 times harder. That's all it's about. You just got to stay up. You got to keep your confidence up. One down doesn't mean you're down forever. And that's all wrestling is, a team. If someone goes down, someone gets pinned, the next person's going to pin for them. It's all heart. That's what I think it's taught me. And it's really just made me an overall better athlete. It's taught me leverage, power, pain. It's all that.
Corey, you don't know this about Coach Vetrano, but sometimes he gets fired up and he does wind sprints in his
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, what are you doing? How you're raising it? This is amazing here. Listening to you. Last question. We do have to run, but look, I believe you were a varsity. You started on varsity as a freshman. You're now a senior. What would you tell yourself, senior version versus freshman 14, 15? What would you tell Corey if you could tell? What would you say?
I would just tell them, go out there and give it your all every time, no matter who you're wrestling. Like 10th grade, I wrestled Adam Busiello twice. If I just told him, give him my all, I can compete with someone like that. You can compete with whoever you can compete with.
Hey, Ray, give this kid a hug.
Yeah, I mean, can we like adopt
this kid a bear hug?
You know, can you have him talk to my kids here? I mean, this is amazing. What are you doing over there at Sachem? You know. Now, Corey, we appreciate your time. Look, we'll obviously follow you. I hope you get out to, you know, we had Frank Popolizio on a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, he's putting together what I'll call a quasi New York State tournament. I hope you do well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ray, I consider you a friend of mine. I appreciate you coming on the show. You know, from afar, envy your program. You know that. You obviously do great things, and you know, we'll look for you along the way. So that's Sachem East, Coach Ray, Corey. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
guys. We'll be cheering for you.
Hey, everybody. This is Coach Ray Pickersgill from Sachem East. I just want to tell you that you should be watching 2-on-1 with Mike Vetrano and Mike Torriero. It is fantastic. It's great wrestling, great entertainment, and great talk about wrestling. How could you go wrong?
Well, Michael, we had Coach Ray Pickersgill. Kind of took, I think, both of us back, you know, through memory lane. I could remember spending time as a kid in you know, in the Sachem room, both in the off season and in the various camps. And really, you know, kind of the first time I was introduced, I'm going to call it, to a professional real wrestling program. I mean, you walk around, I mean, I think you said it best, almost a college atmosphere walking around. I mean, the room was big, tons of athletes, great coaching. You know, Coach Mahoney brought in all kinds of studs. I mean, it's a really great experience.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was a training partner. It was like being John Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport, except for I never ended up winning, you know, but I was a training partner with Jesse, and Mr. Jansen was kind enough to come and pick me up when my dad was a fireman and my mom, you know, had, you know, the other brothers to kind of manage over. And we would take that long drive over, and, you know, you'd walk down the hallway, down the stairs, and you know, you'd start, you know, feeling some sweat and some steam.
The pool, I think past the swimming pool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be steamy and sweaty, and you go and kind of open those doors, and it was, you know, it felt like just the highest level of it was a wrestling shrine of accomplishments and where the sport could take you, and they spoke about where their sport could take you. You had, you know, for me, Isaac Ramaswamy was one of the most influential people in my life in terms of talking about, you know, Mike, if you stay with wrestling, you're going to be able to go see the world. And I remember I was sitting on the back corner of the Sachem wrestling room, and he told me that when I was a young kid, and I've tried to heed his advice. You know, I have a lot of stamps on my passport because of the sport of wrestling. And, you know, Ray was in that room. Coach Mahoney was in that room. You know, there's just so many good memories based upon what Coach Mahoney built at Sachem, and the offshoot of all of our experiences, you know, out of Sachem.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shaped me. I could tell you, it was the first time I was introduced to the program. Just a rattle names. You had, you know, DeMeo. You had You had Davidson, Abley. I mean, it's on and on. Kraft. I mean, there's so many good guys out of there. And I'm not kidding. If I would have grew up a mile and a half north of where I would have been, been at Sachem, right? So I mean, it's I always thought just interesting, but I really appreciated having Ray on, and to talk about Matt. I mean, he's really done great things. Look, Coach Tom is a friend of both of ours. He really turned that program around. I think put them back, but Matt's really taken it to the next level. They're here to stay. If you looked at their lineup, that's a young team, Mike.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, let's not forget how hard that guy's worked since day one. I mean, him and Coach Ray Dom themselves have been putting in the same amount of consistent hours. It takes 7-10 years to be able to, get a cohort of kids to be able to come through, to be able to change that culture and get that momentum. And once you get that momentum, Mike, as it's momentum is the hardest thing to create. And once you get it, it's a hard thing to stop. And, he's been working for a long time, pushing a ball up the hill. And I think he sort of hit that cusp, and I think it's starting to come down. And I think that everybody's got to take a look where they're standing, because if Miller Place comes rolling, they might,
you better get out of the, you better get out of the way. Look, the one thing that was profound with me, he said that room is open 12 months out of the year. Look, we obviously see a little bit of front runners here in Section 11. That's what it takes in Suffolk County. You need to, 12 months out of the year. Obviously, there's some downtime, but to me, that was a very profound statement. So big things. I think we had two fantastic coaches and two fantastic human beings. And look, it shows with their program.
Hey, Mike, good job today. I'm not one trying to close out and you want to close out right now, but I just want to tell you, if you take that hand of yours and you pat it on your back, that's what you should feel about yourself tonight. You did a great job.
Michael, thank you. I mean, look, you make anyone look good. I mean, you're an amazing human being. You're a great orator. You're a great communicator. Your vernacular, your vocabulary is second to none. So I appreciate you. We have the best producer in the biz, Bill O.C. We have the greatest stat man behind the glass, and Matt Diano. I mean, we're lucky. So other than that, that's a wrap. Look, guys, our subscriptions are going up. People are watching. Just keep hitting that subscription button. Share, send it to your friends, get it done. Hit that subscription button. Let's take it to the next level.